Thank you, Lisa. Guys, good to see you. Pablo, Gaspard, we were together last year in the same room, so really happy to have you. You see we have a stage now, getting better. And Thomas, good to have you as well.
Thank you.
Good to have a Belgian ecosystem here speaking. Just before starting, I think it's always good as well for you or to shape your answer. I would like to make a pulse check of the audience of where do you stand in terms of DeFi? Like, who would say you're more beginner with the topic? Intermediate? Expert? That's good.
Like to see that.
That's good. That's good. Just before starting, let's say as an overview, it's a bit more generic questions, but I wanted to get a bit your feeling on. Last year was a big year, I think, with many things that happened. And if we look now to the TVL on DeFi, we stand for months on 45, 40 billions, quite steady. What is a bit your feeling on the market at the moment?
What kills you? Is it okay? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I think. For sure, it has been a rough year in terms of events, but at the same time, I think things stabilize a bit in terms of market. So what is hard as builders, founders, etc., is to adapt to an ever-changing ecosystem, either when things are growing so fast and it's a complete craziness of the bull run, or when everyone is having way too much food in the beer market. And I think we're in a phase where things are a bit steady, so it's actually a good time to be able to bring out products, try out things, and listen to information that you can actually hear, because you don't have that much non-organic noise. So yeah, that's my feeling.
Yeah, I think I mostly agree. I think what we saw the past 3 years was probably a bit too fast. So I think especially with DeFi 2.0, in my opinion, it were more Ponzi games. Now that markets are stabilizing, I think we're realizing that with DeFi, it only exists for 3 years. We have some basic building blocks, but a lot is still missing, crucial pieces of infrastructure. And I think people are realizing that now, and now the actual builders are coming up and slow but steady are building a real resilient, decentralized financial system.
Yeah, I'm going to add up on this. I'd say that the bull market kind of lured us into believing that DeFi had an actual market fit. At this point, and I work in DeFi, so I can be tough towards DeFi. DeFi for me is still a solution looking for its problem, and the bear market is good. It's a good way to entice us into building products that are actually useful, that are actually providing value to people in TradFi, that enable them to do stuff that they wouldn't be able to do, or that they wouldn't be able to do as efficiently as in the traditional financial markets. So I really appreciate the bear market for that, because if you build a product that works, then it means that contrarily to the bull market, where you have a product, you may have working products, but that people use for the wrong reasons. If you build a product that works in this market, then it means that you are up to something and up to pushing the industry further. So I believe that the bull market was super useful to help us build the critical piece of infrastructure, as you said. We've done the proof of concept. You know, we've shown that we were able to do decentralized stablecoins. We've shown that we were able to do money markets. We've shown that we were able to do lending markets. But right now, it's mostly about trying to assemble all these pieces to create a new critical infra to actually grow the market. So I don't look at the prices of crypto and of the market, and I hate to think of the trends of bull market and bear market. And I believe that DeFi, it's not the same as trading Bitcoin and ETH. The narrative of people using it should be completely independent of the narrative of people buying ETH, buying Bitcoin, because these are different products we are building. You know, we are building financial products on blockchain because it's a good standard to build financial applications, and we're not here because people are trading crypto and so on.
I like what you said. That DeFi is a solution to it's a solution to a problem that is looking for the problem. And I think it would be interesting to see a bit for the three of us there. What is your view on that one, and what do you think is the solution to what problem? Because at the end we see that that's pretty much all the thing with the narrative. Like we do not know yet what is the direction. We don't know yet what exact place it will take or what is exact thing it would solve. So I would be curious to know a bit your opinion on that one.
Want to go?
Sure. I mean, I don't know if I agree completely with that statement in the sense that like traditional finance, as we know it, has a lot of constraints and fragmentation and things that are not, they cannot be automated, relying too much on intermediary, lack of transparency. Not everyone has the same access. Actually, you have a lot of those issues, and we did not necessarily tackle those issues in the right way, but we're definitely trying to tackle those. And maybe sometimes we lie to ourselves about actually fixing something that we're definitely not. For example, decentralization, like that kind of thing. Transparency, affirmation is available, but it's not necessarily readable. So our point of view is we're actually trying to make DeFi efficient. Our protocol is doing a layer of interest rate derivatives. And we do think and observe that as long as you don't have this component in DeFi, you cannot have an efficient DeFi. It's way too wild. You have to navigate it and just be exposed to whatever the volatility of the price of liquidity will be tomorrow. And that doesn't make this financial ecosystem practicable for anyone. That being said, that's like the ongoing work, and that's what we're trying to address, I think, in terms of how people handle liquidity, how they bring liquidity. I think we had a talk with Swap that was very interesting because it was actually showing, well, you know, DeFi as you know it, like when people talk about DeFi, they talk about Uniswap at first glance. Well, Uniswap is not necessarily a good protocol in terms of efficiency, but I think we're iterating because people don't have any crazy incentives to give anymore, so this liquidity needs to be correctly used. Anyway, just to say that what we're trying to do is having efficient permissionless finance and efficient liquidity that can be enterable into many different instruments without having the needs of intermediary, and that's what we're focusing on building.
Yeah, maybe my take. I think in the long run, people shouldn't care if they use DeFi or what we call the traditional financial system. They basically want goods and services, and they want the best way to get it. And I think what we're building now is still the middle layers to make it work. And I think there are multiple reasons why DeFi has some advantages over traditional finance. But we're not there yet that you can just buy your flight tickets and your hotel tickets underneath settled on DeFi rails. But that should be the end goal. I mean, you don't want to use DeFi only to trade and lend against other DeFi tokens. You want to use DeFi because then you can finance your house, your company. You can do everything you can do into today's financial system. And as an end user, you don't care what settles underneath your transactions. You want to use the best services for you as a user. And I think that's what we should aim at. We should connect DeFi with needs of actual people. And I think there are multiple reasons why we will get there. I think, for instance, my big advantage of DeFi over traditional finance is one, the tokenization and atomicity, that you can have independent applications because they settle on the same layer underneath. You can combine them without that the applications themselves thought that they might be connected to other applications. And I think that will give a lot of advantages over traditional finance. I think a good example, for instance, is if you want to book your holidays, you look online, what are the cheapest flights and hotels? A country with cheap flights might have expensive hotels. So now you first book your flight and then you see, oh, damn it, my hotel is super expensive. I think with DeFi, if all those applications independently built on the same blockchain, then you can think of that you book the whole holiday at once through different independent applications, and or you get the cheap flight and hotel, or you get nothing at all. And so then the user won't know that it is settled on a DeFi. They just have this service that they like, that they know that their whole holiday is booked for a fixed price, or nothing is booked at all. And you can try in a different country.
And on mine, there is the B2C aspect of DeFi, but there is also the B2B in terms of how it can be more efficient. I'm going to take a simple example. Today, if you have a bond, like your company is controlling a bond, but you don't want to sell it, you want to borrow because you want still to be able to make a yield. Well, a bank will only enable you to borrow up to 50% of the value of this bond. In DeFi, with lending markets, we know how to deal with liquidations. We know that we can set higher loan to values. And so we can, without taking any additional risk, enable you to borrow more than 50% of the value of your bond. And for instance, at Angle, we are doing a Euro stablecoin. We enable people to put tokenized USD bonds and to borrow up to 80% of the value of the bonds in AG Euro. So this is really a simple use case if you think of company financing themselves just because of the infrastructure that enables us to liquidate loans. And again, one example among many on why we can be more efficient. Then we are able to truly provide a value, and it's not a 0 to 1. It's not something that requires having many people, like everyone using stablecoins as a means of payment, or people, all the financial infrastructure relying on blockchains. This is through this kind of specific applications that we will be able to make a difference, and that's how I believe we're going to get to a stage where DeFi is actually used because it's more efficient, and we have to find little by little these small edge improvements that drive this share of the market from TradFi to DeFi, and then find another application to build on top of this. And that's how I believe, we are going to get there.
So if I understood well, for you, it's going to be more an integration within the how do you perceive it versus, let's say, what is in place actually, a traditional financial system? Would you see it more as an integration, a backend, or a replacement in the
I'd say it's in parallel. I don't believe, mostly for regulatory reasons. Like DeFi is going to be regulated. It's not going to be the same cowboys market as it is. It's the Far West right now. There are no rules. The European Union is setting rules, which is great. In the US, you don't know what the rules exactly are. You don't know what's a security or not, or whether you'll be sued. Fine. Personally, I don't want to deal with the US, and none of the product I'm building has to do with the US. But DeFi is going to be regulated, and I believe we will still need links with the traditional banking system or traditional ecosystem. Like for instance, if you look like stablecoins, okay, it's great. It's the most efficient way to send money across the globe, but people still need to off-ramp these stablecoins, and so you still need, like Circle needs to find to open bank accounts for the Euro stablecoins, which is a hard thing to do when you're a company like Circle. And any company trying to bridge the gap between TradFi and CeFi, they need to have super deep roots in the traditional finance ecosystem. So unless everyone uses crypto and uses DeFi, we will not completely supplement the space. We'll just live in parallel and provide value. We'll be like a layer 2 for TradFi.
I agree. I think it's not DeFi against CeFi, and eventually both will live in parallel. But I also think that eventually you can have the same infrastructure, like infrastructure inversion. You can have CeFi on top of DeFi, because indeed it would be like regulated DeFi somehow. I do think that it's very good that we have rules. I do think that we have, it's good that the regulatory ecosystem is moving forward for DeFi. But I also think that it's important that we have permissionless finance, and I do believe that it will keep exist maybe in parallel. So eventually it's a matter of layers, and both will coexist.
And I think a bank or a traditional financial system, it's more than just a settlement layer. So I think the services they provide, they can still do that if they have a blockchain underneath. Not all people want to have their own wallet installed. They like also the peace of mind of having a bank. That doesn't mean that that bank can settle part or whole of its transactions on DeFi or on blockchain. So I think in the long run, I think they can coexist. Or even that TradFi, as we know it today, has also DeFi payment rails underneath.
And as you were talking about regulations, with the upcoming MiCAR is going to be probably a big topic for as of next year. What's your view on that one? Like here we were talking with people like to come discuss here at the Brussels Blockchain Week. We really felt with the policymakers that DeFi was still quite a black box and they didn't know how to tackle it. And if you look, let's say, more from your personal project, what you think would be the pain points and the key actions or the key things? How do you see this?
I think we're all representing decentralized protocols. MiCA doesn't tackle DeFi, so there is a DeFi exemption. And the key question in the coming years, it's going to be, what does decentralized mean? Because you can be, it's easy to say I'm a decentralized protocol, and you can be, there is a concept that is called decentralized in name only, Dino, and we will need to have the right standards to know what needs to be done to be decentralized and not decentralized in name only. And so far there is no case law on this, and until we don't have that, it's hard to know like what are the stuff to implement. For instance, if you look into France, a lot of the projects, but more globally, a lot of the DeFi protocols, a lot of the DAOs are trying to give a legal structure to their DAO. But we don't know yet what's the best way. In France, you can do corporations, you can do cooperatives, you can do associations. If you're in the US, people will tell you to do foundations in the Caymans, and no one knows what's the good setup for a protocol. And yeah, we want more clarity, and this is what I believe will help us become legal at some point.
I think as well, DeFi evolves at a very different speed than regulation. I think when the conversations of MiCA started, it was 2016. Don't shoot me if I'm wrong. But yeah, then there was no DeFi at all. So when MiCA was initially drafted, the only things you used blockchain for were peer-to-peer transactions and trading on custodial exchanges. And that's also what's covered in MiCA. So yeah, DeFi and NFTs all came after most of the text was already written. And yeah, as Pablo said, it's not yet in scope. That said, I don't think for DeFi there will be a whole new piece of 160 pages regulation. I think they will extend MiCA as it is today to in some form cover DeFi as well. And I think it could have been worse. So you need regulation, and I was afraid that they would over-regulate. But I think, as far as I already have written the text, that it's quite reasonable. So I'm happy to see that we are taking steps in Europe. If you compare that to the States, I think the contrast is very big, how they approach DeFi. And I think we're doing good steps.
I agree with what Sabine said. Like we're pretty lucky actually compared to what is elsewhere, especially in the US. And I agree with what you said as well. I think when regulation comes, it actually then brings back the subject of decentralization and in the end responsibility and accountability over your actions and what infrastructure we have or not. So yeah, like eager to see, like we need regulation, we as entrepreneurs and we as users. So we're pretty happy to see that it's moving forward.
Maybe just to close on the, let's say, regulation topic, but more for you, Thomas, like as a DEX, like we really see the trends towards more and more KYC, and so is it?
So yeah, in DeFi, not today. So it is not covered. So there are no KYC obligations as a DEX, and there I'm a bit afraid that they will just impose what is happening in the traditional system on DeFi. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think KYC is there to solve a problem. You don't want money laundering, you don't want terrorist financing, and KYC is a solution to that problem. And I think within blockchain, where we are trying to secure everything cryptographically, I think there are better ways to avoid money laundering and terrorist financing than KYC, where you have to put actually very personal, private information together with every transaction. So I think, yes, we should solve the same problems as in traditional finance, but I don't think KYC, as it is imposed to banks, is the best solution for DeFi. Especially because what a lot of people then say is you just have to KYC the beginning of a transaction. But as I said before, the power of DeFi is the composability. So a lot of protocols use other protocols in between, and are actually not one smart contract, but when you do a transaction on DeFi, often you invoke 15 different smart contracts. If you then have to do a KYC check on each of them, gas will be way too expensive. So I hope as well that there are technical people involved in drafting the legislation that really know the technical implementation and really can grasp up front what things like KYC, the smart contract, would really mean for the technology. So if they would just impose every smart contract has to do a KYC check, you kind of kill DeFi. So it might be with the best intentions. I hope they really understand that it is not the same technology. So yes, we should solve the same problems, but the ways we do it should be different. than we do it in traditional finance.
Also, I want to add that I believe that the mental framework of some regulators needs to change. Like in the US, it's mostly going after securities. Oh, is it a security? And security is viewed as a like really bad thing if it's done in an unregistered way. But for me, it's not the thing that has been harmful to the space so far. Like the stuff that is the most harmful to the retail are the retail traps, like the meme coins, and these assets are not. Purely speaking, securities. Like if you look into the Howey test, which classifies an asset as a security or not, these are not securities, and so these tokens are not going to be regulated if regulators keep the same mental framework. But these are the things which should be banned, because this, if your goal is to protect the retail, and if you let this be free tradable, then you're letting anyone bet and anyone going to the casino, which is what you want to avoid in the first place. So. Like the scope of what should be regulated should be different than what we are trying to regulate in traditional financial markets.
Thank you. And going back maybe more, setting aside the regulation, I will address you to Gaspard. We see that the protocols are getting more and more efficient and user-friendly. What's your assessment on how do we stand at the moment with regards on the different categories of people, and what could be the next things to be done?
Yeah, I think in DeFi, I mean, eventually at the beginning it's finance, but in DeFi we have a spectrum of users that have like a very broad financial knowledge. I mean, a very broad spectrum of financial knowledge. So you're addressing people that are like mostly retails, but you think you're talking to institutions as well, because you're building products that usually are used by those institutions. And I think taking some step backs over the few years of building this DeFi, we learned on building layers in terms of product, in terms of interfaces as well. And eventually you have to address a particular category and focus on that and being efficient for those. So what we do is defining those user categories and trying to build products that are actually answering their needs directly, and less throwing a bottle and imagining that eventually this user category exists today in DeFi. I think liquidity has been a key point since the beginning of DeFi. That's also why we had a lot of non-organical things, because for finance to be able to exist, you need, again, as we mentioned in the beginning, we need it to be efficient. Otherwise, why would user use it in the first place? And that's also something we're taking some step back. Protocols are being built differently right now. Aggregating liquidity through layers, not incentivizing with liquidity mining or that kind of thing. And also, I think there is an important thing in terms of on-chain settlement and off-chain. There is a compromise to be made in terms of efficiency. The talk just before that, Swap was making a good example of it. So I think that's all those technological improvements that we are doing step by step that improve pieces of your product, and that helps you also addressing more defined user categories. That brings the efficiency and the actual activity to your product. That's something that we're trying to do, and I think different protocols focusing on one or the other approach helps making the whole space more efficient overall.
On UX, I'd say that I have mixed feelings about that, because in DeFi, 99% of the volume is done by 1% of the people so far. And so when you are trying to like build a nice UX or build a product, you are often have a biased view. Like you, as you say, you must have a very targeted approach and try to make this product that is going. It depends on what you're looking for, but if you're looking for volume and scale and vanity figures, you need to make the product that is going to appeal to the 1% of DeFi users that make 99% of the volume. Yeah, and so trying to do everything at once can be a danger. And I think like. All as founders, we've all done this mistake, try to make too many features at once, but only being good at one thing, it's already like excellent. And if this feature is excellent for the 1%, then you're fine. Find a niche.
But I think there is also smart contract UX, and that in that term we have standards evolving, and that helps a lot integration and then eventually more efficiency of liquidity. But I agree, eventually it's not just your app, because when you look at the numbers, not all users go through the app, and it's mostly smart contract and integration, but that's what makes it efficient, and that's why building standard, like for 626, that kind of thing, we make it more efficient. And
maybe with regard, I think another big topic on DeFi is on the security. And Pablo, I think it would be cool to have you on stage. And could you go back a bit, okay, on the Euler hack, on how it has impacted you, and yeah, how have you been experiencing it? And
yeah, so I'm going to give some context. So at Engel, we are still a DeFi protocols who are lending funds to other lending markets, and so we used to lend money to USDC to Euler, which got hacked at 9:58 a.m. on the 13th of March 2023. We had 17.6 million USDC on Euler, so we lost these 17.6 million USDC. Eventually, we got, and it was part of a $200 million hack. So when it comes to smart contract security, we were like super vigilant when it came to our smart contracts, when it came to the smart contracts of people we were integrating with. Euler had been audited 8 times, I think. Their front end had been audited, so we had all the right. We have been audited by Chain Security with Emily in the room. We've been audited twice by Chain Security. Excellent service, I recommend. So we had all the green lights to invest in a protocol. We wanted to take advantage of the composability of DeFi to increase the efficiency of the services we proposed. And still, this is what got us caught in the trap of losing 17.6 million USDC. We got super lucky. Like 200 million hacks, it happens in DeFi, but 200 million hacks where the hacker repays the funds and where you make money out of it because the hacker bought ETH, which appreciated in value, it never happens. So we got super lucky in this. We didn't get hacked, but we integrated with protocols which got hacked. So one thing is, like, if you look into the figures of DeFi in terms of hacks, I think in 2022 the value of the hack was 3.2 billion. It's far more than the money you could have made in the space. So the risk reward with DeFi so far it's negative. And if we want to grow as an industry, we need to counter for this. We need to develop new standards. We need to develop new safe primitives that we know are not going to get hacked, or that we know are safer than the rest, because there is no risk zero. And there is no growing, there is no getting institutional money in the space if we don't have this solved, or if we don't get better at this. That's one thing. And the second thing is, DeFi, the promise is composability, being able to integrate with one protocol or another. But composability means multiplying your risk. And so we need better smart contract security, but there is also a need for better risk management within protocols and within all DeFi systems.
Maybe want to add here that I fully agree. I think today DeFi, all protocols still have their risk models where they decide the parameters of how much you can borrow in a lending market, or what the exposure to a certain other protocol that you compose with can be. And today most of those risk models are actually run fully off-chain per entity. So then you can say how decentralized it is. So I think there is a lot of infrastructure missing for DeFi overall, how we can kind of bring those risk models on-chain. That it's also fully transparent for other protocols or the users what the full exposures are. Since the advantage we have on a public blockchain is that in essence you should be able to see the final exposure of a certain asset, but the models that tell you why it's a certain max exposure you can have today are still, I would say, too much off-chain and too much governed centrally. So I think there is a lot to do still. And I think protocols should more come together. There are some initiatives. You have like things like RiskDAO that want to build this. I know Galaxy Digital was thinking of it before the bear market. Not sure if they still do, but I think there is still a lot of work to do on that part.
And on audits as well, because it's an important part, and you shouldn't deal with protocols that are not audited. I think the conceptual framework needs to evolve a bit. You know, sometimes you pay like one audit company and it puts a stamp and people are like, okay, this is good. But actually, like, what matters is not the amount of audits, is the amount of people who spend time looking at the code, the amount of white hats, times the amount of time they've each spent on the code. And you can evaluate the conditional probability that a protocol gets hacked depending on the amount of auditors which looked into the code. And so a good protocol, if it has been audited by less than 8 people, I mean a protocol if less than 8 people looked into the code for like 3 days, it's not safe. Like there is more than, I mean we put some mathematical models for that at Angle and we conceptualize the thing, but you need at least 8 people to have looked at the code for 2 weeks or for like 3 days if you look into competitive audits for something to be safe. But just not an audit, it doesn't mean anything. What matters is the time people spent and the quality of the people who looked into the code.
And to add something to that, I was actually sitting on a panel with the previous head of risk at Euler, I think 2 weeks ago. He renamed, it's not working at Euler anymore, and he renamed himself up to head of taking risk in DeFi. He actually said something that was really relevant. He said, like, when you're building a protocol, you have to be right all the time. When you're a hacker, you only have to be right once. And so we have, as protocols, to have the right incentive models for people finding risk, like a breach in protocols, and we have to have the right risk management framework as users and liquidity providers and protocols integrating other protocols to be able to contain and mitigate those things, because it's not that hacks won't happen, it's what will be the effect of those. And we're building extremely composable finance with autonomous settlement, so contamination and propagation of risk and things can happen very fast.
Yeah, and also audits are just one aspect of the overall security of a protocol. I think much more time and visibility should be on test suites of protocol. I would like that all protocols make their test suites public. Then you can see how far they went with unit testing, integration testing. So I think a bit too much of the focus was always on the audit. But if the protocol is not 100% covered by tests, then don't even start the audit. I think that should be priority number one, that you do everything you can as a protocol to test it and also make it public, that other people can see what they thought of, what are the invariants. And yeah, I think that's something we also should improve.
And there is also another risk and security aspect which needs to be taken into account in like for growing DeFi. There are protocols which are mutable and protocols which are immutable. Protocols which are mutable, if you interact with them, you know that they can change, and you can never know for sure that if they are safe at the time t, they will be safe at the time t+1.
That's not DeFi for me.
I mean, I am for the mutable. I'm for mutable DeFi because that's how I believe we're going to get to a market fit for the space. But it just needs to be taken into account. Like if you interact with purely immutable stuff like Uniswap, okay, it's fine. It makes it super easier. It makes it easier to use it as like building blocks that everyone uses. But if you are like protocols built on top that rely on the mutable smart contracts, on upgradable smart contracts, we do at Angle have upgradable smart contracts, then the security implication of interacting with these protocols is a bit higher.
I agree, and we have upgradable smart contracts, so the devil's advocate or just our advocate. I think in the risk management framework that you're building to evaluate risk of the protocol and everything, at the technical level, they're not just upgradable contracts, it's admin functions, admin rights. And so if you have an immutable contract with admin rights that can be changed, then eventually it's kind of the same thing. The great thing about Uniswap is if the pool works, then I don't think there is an admin function that can actually do something of it. But I think that's how deeper it should be looked into is like what can change, and it's not just the logic of the code because of a delegate call. It's who has admin rights, how is it decentralized, and that kind of thing. And it's like lots of variable in a broader risk management framework.
Our contracts are immutable, but we have foreseen a flow that if we would have a new version of the protocol, that the user can very easily migrate funds or positions without needing to close them to a new version. But the protocols as deployed now cannot just be upgraded. So I think we should go more to immutable contracts. And we do have some admin functions, and we spend a lot of time on how we can minimize them and at some point avoid them. I think the Uniswap way is the way to go. So once deployed, it cannot be changed at all. It's of course difficult, but yeah, that's why we're building new stuff, I would say, to get to that point that everything more like functions like a Uniswap, and that if you integrate with the contract, you always know how it will react and how it will do your state transitions, and that you don't have unpleasant surprises. Because with upgradability also come more risks. Then just that the code might change. I think we have seen it with some bridges that they didn't foresee the state quite well, that some values got overwritten and also 200 million got lost, not because they did a malicious upgrade, but because something went wrong in the upgrade itself.
If we want to look at this a bit from a higher perspective, one of the missions as well of the conference is what we really want to bridge, let's say, Web 2 and Web 3 world. And let's say from a CFI perspective or traditional bankers, it could, let's say, doubt a bit on the decentralized solution to be integrated into the real system. From the one hand, what you see is that smart contracts works because they just execute it and liquidations follows. But then for them, it could raise as well, let's say, more doubts and fear about this. So for you, it will be really into the audits, the kind of smart contracts, and from the smart contracts position, or what would you say to this kind of profile?
Well, as mentioned, I think it's about having a risk management framework. It's not because it's blockchain that it's secure, and it's not because it's not blockchain that it's necessarily secure as well. And like you have to make compromises. And I think we have an amazing technology. We did a lot of progress on standard on like how to do best efficiency security. Now, because of all those hacks, we're studying it from a different angle. Okay, maybe we need to have a deeper look at the security of what we integrate as well. And those things make the ecosystem evolve. And sure, we have already too much hacks. Like I would not want to be an insurance for a DeFi protocol. That being said, I think we're getting there, and we definitely have the premises that, as mentioned in the beginning, will make DeFi even more efficient than traditional systems, and I would say even more secure at some point. So it's a progressive process for sure. It's evolving a lot, but let's not just look at the numbers of there was this big hack and this big thing, because that's not a good way of evaluating the whole framework.
In the end, hacks make you more resilient. I'm going to take a conditional probability example again, but the conditional probability that you get hacked if you have already been hacked is smaller than the conditional probability that you get hacked if you have never been hacked, because you have learned from your previous mistakes. And well, it depends on the protocol, because if a project is bad from scratch, then it may make other mistakes in the past, in the future. But so hacks are also an expensive way to learn and to converge towards a safer model. So the more hacks, I'd say, as long as there is not a lot of money. I mean, it's still a lot of money, but the more hacks, the better.
It's both. You're finished, or?
No, I'm sorry.
I think blockchain is per definition open, public, transparent systems, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing. On the one hand, hacks are visible for everyone, so they're easy to find and exploit. But on the other hand, all other protocols learn from every hack. So I think as time passes on, it's not only if you're hacked that you will improve, but other builders. I mean, I think if there's a new hack, the first thing all similar protocols do is as well try to find out what happened, see if their code base is vulnerable, or if they built a new product, go over all the past hacks and see, could this happen with our code base, yes or no? So yeah, it's indeed a gradual process, but the advantage is that it's all open, public, and transparent. So it's, on the one hand, easy to hack, but also easy to learn and improve, which is not the case in a traditional financial system. I'm quite sure there are a lot of gaps in every banking system today, but because it is not transparent, people don't know about it, but other banks also don't learn of it.
And just to complete that, I think we have to understand as well that incentives for people building those protocols are shifting as well. In 2021, it was like you're a computer scientist, build something related to finance, you have 2 months and we'll throw money at you. So of course it was not secure. And now you know that when you're building a protocol, if you just launch quickly, deploy something and it gets hacked in the next month, then you won't get any money, you won't get any users, and that's pretty much useless, and you wasted your time. So like the maturity change, we were talking initially about benefits of bear market, even if that can seem a bit hypocritical, but I think definitely in terms of mentality and incentives and what drives like the different actors, that changed a lot, and so now it's way more mature and adapt to have a efficient and secure layer.
Maybe to start wrapping up, if we look to the next year, what you would personally like to see either from your project on the DeFi ecosystem and as next things and achievements?
So first, I don't like the word DeFi. I prefer the word open finance, the concept of open finance, because this is what we're building. There are some bricks which are decentralized and some which are just open because they are handled by centralized parties, and it's not bad. What I want to see in the next year is actual utility to the DeFi. People using it because not because of token incentives, but because it enables them to do stuff in a more efficient way than what they could do otherwise. So I'm really bullish on tokenization solutions and how these, like you can use tokenized assets or real world assets, as people call them, into other decentralized protocols. You can create a lot of value through this, and I would want to see more explorations, and I want to participate in these explorations with Engel.
I mean, yeah, I would definitely say the same. More organic usage. I would like to see more users using open finance because that's their best option and the most profitable one, for sure.
Yeah, and I think as well there are a lot of technological improvements coming next year or the year after it's much more scalable and easy to adopt. So I think, for instance, ZK knowledge or validity proofs will tremendously increase both the privacy on chain as the scaling. Other things like account abstraction will make it a lot easier for users to really own their identity on chain without a need of complex wallets, because I think definitely how it is today is not for everyone, that you have to store 12 words somewhere in your house and cannot leak them. So I think their account abstraction will do a lot. And intents as well is a technology I'm looking forward to. Right now as a user, you have to fully build the very complex transaction on chain. With intents, you can just say, I want this outcome, and you can kind of outsource the building of the transaction and how you have to interact with a lot of protocols to third-party experts, but it's still all, you still are sure that what you say as an intent will be executed and nothing more or less. So you're not giving away trust, you're just outsourcing the complex interactions of the blockchain while still keeping the security and decentralized self-custodial aspect of it. So I'm sure that all those three things together will also make it easier for users and will drive adoption.
Look, I hope I will see you next year and we will be able to make the assessments already sent with this wish list. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dimitri, for asking the right questions, and thank you for our panelists for the great conversation. So it was our last panel. Questions, yes. From the audience, do we have some questions? Christophe.
Thomas, you told us KYC may not be the best option for DeFi because of the smart contracts, but do you have already an alternative?
Zero knowledge proofs, so that you can prove that you are or in a whitelist or blacklist without needing to fully give all your details. And I think as well, there will also be some new opcodes, for instance, in the EVM transient storage, that you can pass state along different contracts so that you don't have to KYC each individual contract, but you can still prove that somewhere at the beginning a check was done.
And what would be the counter-arguments for the legislator to not go in that way?
Yeah, because they say, yeah, banks have to do it, so it's reasonable that smart contracts also have to do it. So because they don't fully understand the difference, yeah.
Any other questions? Yes?
Upgradability and admin rights. Do you have a recommendation for like an average DeFi user, how to control and how to track what can be modified, how it can be modified? You kind of have a way to keep an eye on this in the user-friendly way?
In a user-friendly way, I don't have a good answer. The bad answer is the non-user-friendly way is just if you see on the Etherscan smart contract, if you see read as proxy, then it's upgradable, and you should be wary of that. But no, like I think there is a need for better independent assessments of protocols that can look into protocols, digest them, and do a user-friendly report on them. So there are some teams, DeFi Safety Exponential is doing that as well. A bit like Moody's or Standard & Poor's equivalent, but for DeFi. And that would be the user-friendly way to do it. But I don't think, or maybe I'm wearing blinkers, but I don't think that this is something that can be automated.
It's hard to do something user-friendly for that, but we're actually building a suite actually to help risk management on that aspect, and actually have eyes on your exposure and mapping efficiently this kind of variable. But I agree that today is quite hard.
Yeah, I think for layer 2s you have such like L2 beat. There you have an independent party that puts all the layer 2s next to each other and gives the assumptions and control that the different layers have. I think for general protocols there should be similar initiatives, and I think auditors are the perfect party to group together and establish that.
No, I think contracts and protocols should be coded with the idea that there can be governance wrongdoings, and you need to be wary of that when building the protocol. In going back to the idea of decentralization. Down the road, I think it's going to be super important that governance is on-chain and doesn't rely on the multi-sig to implement changes, because people in multi-sig implementing what has been voted on Snapshot and putting it on-chain, they are putting their reputation at risk, but sometimes the reputation is worth less than the money you can make by manipulating DeFi protocols. So on-chain governance, but on-chain governance is risky if you don't implement the right circuit breakers and safety checks on top.
Yeah, it's definitely an additional attack vector. As you have seen with Tornado Cash, they did have on-chain governance and didn't implement it that well, and we saw like a regulatory capture and someone that managed to then get the whole treasury pointed to their address. So it has some additional attack vectors, but I think it mitigates more attack vectors by doing it. So I think here as well, the same as everything in DeFi, standards will come for it, and with every governance attack, this standard will improve.
We had the last question here.
I'd be curious to hear from the three, since you have, I guess, you're at different stages in your protocols, how you think about multi-chain expansion in the bull market. A lot of these protocols were expanded pretty rapidly. There were a lot of opportunities in market to capture, but now in the bear market, we see some of these either expansion plans being halted or even retracted in some cases. So how do you guys see multi-chain expansion?
It depends on what you intend to do with your protocol. At Engel, we're doing stablecoins. A stablecoin is a standard, and no one has incentives to use your standard unless other people use it. And so you need to lower the barrier to interact with the standard. So Engel is a cross-chain protocol. And for us, the blocker when growing cross-chain is not, do we need to do this because we must make AGROs safely available across every chain. But at the same time, we don't have, I mean, we do have some technical resources, but the blocker is really, do we have the time to do this, and is it what we are prioritizing? But as a stablecoin, you need to be eventually on all chains, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense for you because I think you have different user profiles depending on the chain as well. I think eventually that will be abstracted with different layers as well, because that, you know, we were talking about transaction cost, that kind of thing. That being said, we talked a lot about risk as well, and I would definitely say be careful about bridges, be careful about like too many chains, too many layers. Like we tend to expand a bit too fast on that aspect, and that's definitely something that I think is concerning in terms of inertia. When you break a bridge, you can do maybe a lot more than when you break just one protocol. So that's definitely a key factor to take into consideration.
Yeah, it's also a bit a trade-off. With more chains, you're again a bit breaking up composability and fragmenting your liquidity. So I think layers or different blockchains seem to be the way to scale. But you can also not go everywhere, because then you're fragmenting your liquidity, and yeah, then we're getting back to zero. So.
Thank you. No more questions.